Hi guys, welcome to the Fix It podcast. Good to have you here on this episode.
Yo, are you about to rap?
We're excited to be here. My name is Cheryl.
My name is Daniel, and it seems like you wanted to rap. What would your rap name be if you were a rapper?
None.
Ankara?
None.
None whatsoever.
None.
Hey, welcome to the Fix It podcast. Basically, what we do here to just run through in case it's the first time that you are joining us. I don't know why this is your first time. You have a backlog to go and check out. It is a place where we try to contribute our two cupboards to ensure that families and relationships, attain the best level that they can attain. Because at the end of the day, it is for marriages and for one-on-one relationships, it's a two-way thing. And so we try to remind ourselves and everybody, of course, that everybody has a part to play.
Yep.
To ensure that relationships work. Because a lot of us always sit back and expect things to happen from the other side, and we never look inwards to see that things work properly.
And so we're here to fix it together.
Yes, we are. And today, we're going to be continuing a conversation that we started a couple of weeks ago that has to do with single parenting. The last time that we had our conversation, what did we talk about again? Building a tribe. Building a tribe. Yes, exactly. And today, we want to shift away from there for a bit because we've noticed that most of the conversation that we've had concerning single parenting has looked at the parent and not as much as the child or as much at the child. And today, we want to be able to now focus on the parent-child dynamic, right, of this conversation. And we want to touch on one very important point, which if you saw the episode before last, it sort of caused a bit of a, back and forth between Cheryl and I about how it is that, a single parent of a different sex may end up, not raising a child properly of the same sex, right? Now, we're not talking about whether a parent can, gender-based roles and all of that. We're not talking about that. What we want to focus on today, right, is this very faint line. Would you call it a line? Would you call it a situation? Let me use that term, right? Because this is something that we have seen in society, right? The danger for a single parent to want to sort of overcompensate. Do I use the word undercompensate? Because on either side, it is a sort of overcompensation that is occurring. What do I mean by this? A lot of single parents are seen to, want to, yes, properly take care of their children. But it does get to a point. It does get to a point where you have gone from the level of, I am being affectionate to this child, to the point of spoiling this child. What do I mean by that? You see a situation whereby the parent is supposed to, put their foot down. A single parent is supposed to put their foot down on a situation and discipline a child, right? In a certain, way that this child should grow. But because you are the single parent and you don't want to make this child feel bad, or you're scared that this child will feel as though you are not doing enough to bring them up, you end up overcompensating with taking care of this child. And the reason why I said I don't know where that undercompensation comes to is because at the end of the day, if you decide that you want to, pamper this child so that they don't feel, like you're being hard on them. On the other side, on the flip side, you may overcompensate, please correct me if I'm wrong, overcompensate to the point where you're not trying to be so hard on the child when it comes to disciplining them. So that's why I said undercompensation doesn't seem to exist in this vocabulary of mine that I'm trying to, share with the world. So there's overcompensation on either side. I am going to pamper this child to the extreme, or I'm going to deal with this child, quote unquote, discipline this child to the extreme. And that is the conversation we want to have. Today, I'm going to give you a good example in my own case. Of course, I grew up under a single parent, and I was the only child of that single parent. And is it interesting that, as much as you've heard me tell you so many times that true baby, was the best mother anybody could have, right? Took care of me and everything. That there were some days that I wondered if she was actually the one that gave birth to me. Yes, there were days.
I mean, I grew up in a 2-parent household, and there were days when I wondered whether my parents were my parents. It really had really.
I mean, imagine.
I don't know if that's a function of a single parent type of situation specifically, because there's one other of my siblings too who at one point thought the same thing. We're like, no, this is not my mother. This is not the person that gave birth to me. I think that was generally a function of the kind of discipline and the kind of household that you're raised in generally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in my own case now, it would have been easier for, say, a child who is a single child with a single parent. You may get to that point where you're thinking, if only my daddy was here, my daddy would treat me better.
I get that.
You understand? If only my daddy was here. In your own case, you're seeing your daddy and your mommy. In my own case, once in a while, I'd be like, I usually this person give birth to me, right? I don't think I ever got to that place of, I mean, if my daddy was here, my dad, because of course, like I told you, the woman did really well. So I didn't really miss the presence of a father. In that.
But you wondered whether she gave birth to you.
Yes. Yes. So that is a very interesting thing that.
So what was it that got you to that thought process?
There were days. Like I remember vividly, there was one day my mom had just decided that this was going to be a day. Was it my mom or was it me? I was sure at 12 at the time. And you can imagine how a 12-year-old child would speak to a parent who was 30 years older than them and say, what have I done to you? What is it?
What was she was giving you back to back?
That morning, no. It was a Saturday morning. I remember very well. It was a Saturday morning. I'd woken up from sleep and it was back-to-back basketballs, back-to-back. Because I'd woken up as early as 6 or 7 that day. And by the time I lost it, like, what is it? What have I done? What is the problem? This was like by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I remember it vividly because after I finished speaking, my spirit man said to me, Baba, I saw you for die today.
What was her response when you asked her that question?
She bit her lip.
Huh?
She bit her lip. She was like, and because she was cooking at the time, and I was seated right by the freezer, by the fridge, and she had just been going at me. And I went, what have I done? What is it? What have I done? And she left what she was cooking, bit her lip, and walked away. She bit her lower lip and walked away. So whilst we're having the conversation about what we should talk about today, and we're looking at different things, when I saw that topic that I shared with you, that was one of the first things that came to my mind, that, I remember that on this day, this thing happened. Do you get? Because, I mean, my mom was quite the tough woman. She was quite the alpha female. She was quite the person that was a stickler for discipline. There was nothing you could do. No, she could. But then I have seen parents too. I remember we helped somebody, house their child while she was going around trying to get things to happen for herself. And the child was spoiled by a single mother, right? Everything, as in to the point of, I don't want to eat, all I want to eat is biscuit. And she could feed this boy biscuit straight for 3-4 days. Just because he says, this is what I want.
But she wouldn't do that with you.
I'm not talking about my mother. I'm talking about somebody else whose child was living with us.
Okay.
Yeah, my mama. Yeah, man. There was no such thing as this is what I want to eat. Other people. No. Whatever she put on the table was what everybody was going to eat.
For me, 2 things come to mind. There's this thing about parenting styles, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Parenting styles generally, whether you are a single parent, whether you're a 2-parent household, parenting styles, it's one of the conversations that will come up when it comes to these kinds of things, right? That will now tell whether you are threading that fine line between, discipline and what?
Affection.
And affection. Well, I don't know if there can be a line threading it. I mean, for me, there are 2 very different things.
You know what? Let's not even say discipline and affection.
Okay.
Let's talk about threading the line between affection and overcompensation. Let's make it that, right? Because a lot of people cannot tell when I'm being affectionate towards this child, and when I have completely lost the plot and I'm leading this child down a destructive path because I'm just letting this child have their way all the time. But then at the same time, there are parents who are on the other extreme, which I just explained to you now. On the other extreme, in the name of I'm trying to discipline this child, and then, that's me coming back to it again. Trying to discipline this child and going to the extreme and abusing this child, basically. So that's it.
So first of all, is it a thing with single parents? I come back to that because, depending on the kind of way you were brought up, you being the parent now, I don't see. Well, for some people, there is a drastic shift from the way they were brought up and the way they want to raise their children. But the one thing is clear: the elements of how you were brought up will always still be inside you when you're raising your child.
True.
And this is like a general case type thing. But when you're now a single parent, I understand that in some instances you're constantly questioning yourself and asking yourself, am I doing this right? Am I doing right by this child? And so the lines tend to blur sometimes. Okay. We talked about it one episode. What was that? I think it was the one. Was it about finding your tribe or so? That episode where we talked about having like a routine. You have your thing that you're doing. You have what keeps you going, but not leaning on it as a crutch. Instead, using it as something to spur you on. Hopefully, it's something that you're earning money from and all of that, and then it gives you something to look forward to every day in your own space as a human being, first of all, right? Now, you may have parents in instances like that who have found this thing, possibly are using it as a crutch, and so they're not able to have work-life balance where they're able to create ample time to spend with their children, nurture their children, teach their children, and all of that. It's difficult enough sometimes, even in a two-parent household, because sometimes gender roles can be are not as traditional as they used to be. And so you have two parents who are working and the children on their own. How much more when you're doing it all by yourself? You have the responsibility to provide financially. You're trying to be there also emotionally for the child. And so it can get to a point where your routine may become a crutch, or it becomes something that doesn't allow you to have ample time for your child. And so when you're with your child, you then tend to want to overcompensate. I think that's where overcompensation comes in.
If I'm getting you properly, is it just a work-life balance thing, or is it because of the fact that you're scared that this child will miss the presence of the other parent?
So I started with that as an example because we've kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
It comes from a place of, and I will always say this, it comes from a place of how healthy the emotional space of that parent is.
Okay.
Male or female, right? And so your emotional health will determine how you then raise your child as well in a way that is healthy. If you don't have those routines, if you don't have those things that help you be you in your fullest essence, right? When it comes to spending time with your child or raising your child as you should, what you would then have is either you're not doing enough or you are overdoing. Do you get what I mean?
I get you.
So I just use the work thing as one example.
Yeah.
There are instances where, apart from the work thing, even when you're in your space with your child, are you present, for example? Are you present? We live in a day and an age where parenting generally, not specifically peculiar to one parent household, is such that there's been sort of like an outsourcing of our care for the children. Once they have a device, you come back, you're on your own, the child is on their own. Oh, mommy, and they come and meet you, and you just give them their phone. So in those instances, it could be that because you're constantly trying to get them out of your way, like just go somewhere else, do something else, because you are not there for them, then what you tend to do, because children are very sensitive to these kinds of things, right? I take a child, for example, who knows that, because mommy's not really fully present in that time, I can go and say, mommy, can I get this? And the mommy will say yes. There's not a lot of thought that goes into it, right? Or the flip side of it will be, You're there, yes, and then you're trying so hard that this child is not spoiled, especially when it's just one. I think this is particular when it's just a one child type of thing. And then you're trying to make sure that the child is not spoiled. So you then going hard on them. Like, I'm working so hard. I'm taking care of you. I'm doing everything. Oh God, I remember one time I kind of tore that path. I'm not like I kind of tore that path. When my son was being difficult, I would just break out into this whole rant, and I'll just keep going. You know, I'm the only one. Everything that I'm doing, can't you just pity me? Can't you take care? Can't you?
That is coming from a place of frustration, apparently.
Yeah, it is. And then in instances like that, depending on how old or how young this child is, you fail to see that the child is going through their phases of childhood, and children will do what they're supposed to do at those phases and in those ages. And then you now become too hard on them. I said all of that to say it comes from a place of how healed the parent is, really and truly. It would then translate into the parenting style and making sure that the parent is there as they should be, present physically and also present emotionally.
Because
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It does. The major concern would, for me, be especially tilting towards those extremes on either side. Now, you have a lot of, and this takes us back to that conversation we're having about 2 episodes ago. If you remember, we said something about the mommy's boy phenomenon. Yeah, more often than not, a mommy's boy phenomenon feels more like this person is so dependent on, they don't make their own decisions. They consistently will always defer to their moms and all of that. That would stem from a situation whereby this child has consistently, I don't think I'm making the right, giving the right example here, but
let me see if I can help you here.
Yeah.
So your typical mommy's boy is somebody who, the mom, first of all, has leaned on very heavily, especially emotionally.
Okay.
So you have a situation where it's just me and it's just my boy, and I don't have any other emotional outlets. I don't have any other kind of outlets in that phase of my life as a parent. So I would lean on the child. I would lean on the child a little more than I should.
The major concern would for me be, you know how, which I believe I might have said it in too many words at the start, is the danger, right, of crossing the line between showing affection properly, and pampering a child to the point where that child will end up becoming a liability to themselves and society, at the same time a nuisance to everybody around them. You get, because you have a case whereby, even though you've already established that it also happens in a 2-parent household, but because the conversation is heavy on single parenting, I feel the average single parent is in danger of falling into this trap. Yes, which is usually self-inflicted. Especially like you already mentioned, it most likely will happen from a place of a person who has not properly healed, who has taken over the responsibility of caring for this child. Even wanting to be overtly soft with that child is also from a place of improper healing, because I don't want you to feel like a parent is missing.
Can we ever actually make children feel like they're lacking in terms of one parent or the other by overcompensating, over pampering? Isn't that just something that we try to tell ourselves?
That's the point. The child most likely doesn't know about it when you are letting them get away with a lot of things, or, acceding to their every whims and caprices, giving them everything they're asking you for. Because call me weird, I don't think it is everything that a child asks you for that you give them. I just believe that sometimes you have to teach them how to be okay with not having a couple of things. There's a video I saw on social media, which I believe I showed to you. Even though this parent is not a single parent, this parent has a number of children, and one of their kids, or one of her children, was known to be a naughty child in school, right? And they had spoken to this child again and again. Of course, this is in the American society, so there's nothing as, oh, let me flog you and all of that. No, that doesn't apply there. But they had consistently spoken to this child, and the child had refused to listen to the corrections that the child had been given. And so what the mother did was take the entire family out. That's the mother and the father. Take the entire family out to Chuck E. Cheese. Like, it's a place where you can eat and at the same time play. You get. And whilst they were going, she packed soup. Not our regular egusi soup, Nigerians, please. Before you're thinking of afang and obono, yes. But, packed a little bowl of soup. And when they got to Chuck E. Cheese, everybody was playing. Everybody was having fun. This girl was literally excited to be at Chuck E. Cheese. She was like the most excited one amongst all of them. But when everybody else was playing, her mother made sure she didn't play. Mother made sure that she saw everybody have the fun that they were having. When it came to food, she bought what apparently was something the girl liked, which was pizza, and gave the girl the bowl of soup to eat whilst everybody else was eating pizza. Now, for me, that was an ingenious way to instill discipline into the child, to ensure that the child doesn't misbehave anymore. But reading through the comments, I saw a couple of people who were saying that was wicked to the child. Do you get what I'm saying? Some people were like, you're causing trauma for this child. Now, such kind of person who is saying you're causing trauma for this child is most likely the kind of person that, in the name of wanting to be the hero in the eyes of the child, especially if they happen to be a single parent, because interestingly, the person who was making that complaint was also a woman. The person who's trying to make that complaint is most likely going to be the kind of person who, instead of correcting the child, would fight the teacher for correcting her child. It was you and I who saw the situation of a school where our boy used to be in, where parents went to start slapping a teacher, and then the video went out there and all of that. Affection and pampering, discipline and abuse. Very thin line. Very, very thin line.
So the question now becomes, for those of you who are in, this kind of conversation or this kind of situational conversation, for you, is this a different thing? And I'm guessing that we're going to have people who are also going to be sharing from two-parent households concerning parenting and all of that, and knowing how to balance it, knowing not to cross the lines and all of that. What would you say is affection, and what then crosses the line? I believe that your affection and still pamper your child and you have not crossed the line. But people think differently. So share with us your experiences. Maybe tell us some story about you and your child and how you're able to balance it out. Because the key in this conversation is being able to balance it, especially in single parent households, in such a way that you are sending out into the world children who are emotionally mature enough, know how to regulate their wants, needs, desires, all of that, because it does translate long-term in the future. A child who is over pampered, or a child who is brutalized in the name of discipline, it translates in the adults that we see going forward. So we'd like for you to share your experience with us, share your stories with us. How do you balance it in a single parent household, especially? And, even outside the single parent household, because our experiences are what shape us into the kind of parents that we become for our children. Yeah. So let us know. I guess in single parent households, the thing about even us being able to regulate our emotions translates as well. There were times when, in the process of trying to discipline my child, on one or two occasions, I went overboard. Like, I was angry, but then my anger was not just about what he did, but it was about everything that led me to the situation where I was at that particular point in time. So I had to learn to regulate. Do you get? I think there was one particular instance we had labored, and I had got him this iPad, not the typical one, the learning ones.
Tablet.
Yes. Well, those things, yeah. I got him one of those. It was the learning ones. It had cartridges and all of that, and I was really excited for what he was doing with it. But I remember one particular instance, and I was so mad at him. I literally took it and I flung it into the dustbin, and it cracked, and that was the end of it. And I sat back and I was thinking, okay, that kind of reaction was definitely not just coming from my interaction with him. What was he? I don't think he was older than 5, 6 at the time. You would think that I was having a spat with my lover that just jilted me, that kind of thing. So emotional regulation always very key. Now, when it comes to pampering, were there any instances where I felt like over pampered him? I think for me, it was a case of maybe for all the times that I didn't have what he asked for, or I couldn't provide for him what he asked for. When I had, I provided plus the one he asked for, plus the one he did not ask for, just to make up for it. That was me overcompensating. And then
I would understand.
one last one before you go there. One other instance that I would say where I try to overcompensate until I was able to get to the point where I'm like, no, chill, have balance, is when he tries to get something from me and I say no, he then tries to go to his father, my ex, to try and get it. And I'm like, look, because of the relationship at the time, which was very, very turbulent, I'll be like, okay, you see this thing that you want, you won't get it from him, but when I get it, I will get it for you. So I will not go overboard, just so that I can show out. Is that the word? Yeah. So instances like that, but it's all about emotional regulation, really and truly. I think that's the key for me. But please do share from your experiences as well.
Petty you.
Occasionally, I wear it. I will not lie. I'm not a perfect human being. I told you, what episode was it that I said it took me 7 years before I started trying to balance out? So don't play. I had my moments, definitely, for sure.
So I was going to say, I understand a case where you say, okay, you didn't have it. The way you now have it, you tended to go overboard. That's understandable. It wasn't an everyday thing, right? In as much as parents, you want to be able to, me that I'm speaking, when did I become a parent? Parents, you want to be able to, meet your children's needs and all of that. It is an issue when it becomes routine.
So, I said this earlier on, I say this again. As a single parent, you need to be able to find a parenting style that balances things out for you. I think that's the key to this. And you're gonna have to figure out what works.
What do you mean by parenting style?
There are different parenting styles, okay? Depending on the kind of child they are raising. I don't think it's a one size fits all approach, but find what works for you. But make sure that you're doing it from a point of,
is it?
I do all right. My mind is calm.
Is it also possible, because you said this thing is very important, is it also possible to have different parenting styles for different children from the same parent?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, each child is different. And so sometimes there is a need for that. You can parent so differently amongst all your children that it may become a problem. So whatever you're doing, let wisdom be your guide, I would say.
For me, it's not an issue when, once in a while I splurge on the kids and all of that. Once in a while, well, occasionally let you have your way and all of that. But parents who let their children have the way all the time. I've seen situations whereby, for example, again, referencing something I saw on social media, a woman who was raising her child alone. The boy was about 14 or 15, and she didn't let him have what he wanted. And the boy literally trashed the whole house. He went to get, I don't know, he got whether a sledgehammer or something, and trashed the entire house. You hear parents, single parents, unfortunately, a lot of single mothers, and I'm not restricting this to our society. I'm talking about in very many societies as well, where you see a lot of single mothers are now afraid of their children.
No, so it's how you start.
Based on what?
It's how you start.
Do you understand? Based on how you started.
What was the foundation that you laid? That's one. There are two things that I think usually come into play in these instances. One, it's how the foundation you laid. How did you start raising that child? There's certain values you instill into children from early on. They know not to. Like, even we at a point when we were growing up, there were times they wanted to but yes, there were times where we did that. There were times where we wanted to. At the very least, you wanted to.
Did it show?
But at some point, I mean, there was one day I told my mom, I said, hey, it's not beat you want to beat me. She ain't beat you, big mom. You stand, beat me. And I wasn't even a child when that was happening, so you can imagine. So there are times when you want to but the values and how you raise a child, what does the good book say? Train a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they will not depart from it. There might be some shifting here and there, but there's not usually a total departure. So in that instance of the video that you referenced, chances are that there was that foundational problem there. Or the second thing that may have been at play is how much influence does the other parent have in the child's life at that point in time? Because children will leverage those advantages. Children will leverage those advantages. And we get to an episode where we talk co-parenting, and some of the dynamics that play. But when you have the influence of another partner, and God forbid that partner does not have sense, you understand what I mean? They will influence the child in a certain way that may lead to those kinds of tantrums that you saw in that video. Because there will be a constant manipulation and playing on the mind of that child to make the work that the other parent is doing seem like they don't care about you, or they don't like you, and so when you say a child act out like that.
Do you think if there was proper upbringing from that one parent, despite the influence of the other parents, that this child will act like that?
No, I don't.
Which means that parent who the child is acting out against has still failed as a parent.
Not failed, but I mean, you have to give grace. It's not failure. It's just, where were they in their early days of having to deal with it? That foundational point that we're talking about, the foundation you lay, the values you lay, and all of that, is a function of where you are at mentally. If you're not in the right place, you cannot pour into that child the right way. That's just the honest truth. So that's why the previous episode that we addressed, I said the first thing you want to do is ensure that you get your mind right. And we pray more often than not that you're able to get to that point earlier on. And that's why we talk about getting the right kinds of community and all of that to help you get there. Because it might not be an easy journey to get you to that point. But if you do get there, it makes things a whole lot easier.
So I think it's very important to remember that you are the child's parent first. Above everything else, before you are the child's friend, before you're the child's whatever it is, you're the child's parent first. And your major responsibility as a parent, whether single, co-parent, or regular parent, your major responsibility is to ensure that you are sending out a person who is properly groomed when they head out there. And for me, character supersedes everything, right? Some of the things you have to teach a child that are character-based are things like ethics, values, hard work, those kind of things.
And while you're doing that, remember to stand fit. Stand fit, bro. Because like I said, there's some things we did as children growing up. You constantly see, what was this I saw also on social media the other day? Something about a blizzard. I think it was a blizzard.
Yeah.
There was a lot of snow. I'm not sure if it was like the snow was coming down a particular area, but all of a sudden, you see this little bear who's playing, right? And then the mom, I believe it was the mom, just rushed the bear from the back and covered it, like completely covered it. And then the next thing I saw was the snow go past and then came out, and then the child was protected, and it was the mom that bore the brunt of avalanche, blizzard, whatever what it was. And it struck me when I saw that video, because sometimes these are the things that we saw growing up that, as children, we would be feeling bad and attacking our parents and asking our parents, asking ourselves the question that he has, are you sure this woman is the mother that mothered me? Or you say, oh, are you my parents? Sometimes it is that. And you don't realize it until you're much older.
Yep.
So when you have to take that place as well and cover your child, imagine that bear, the little bear, must have been so uncomfortable when the mom did that. And that's why I say stand fit, because as a parent, as a single parent especially, there's some things that you have to do that is covering for your children, but they may not get it until maybe years down the line, but still do it. But whatever it is that you're doing, do it from a place of healing. Because some of us, depending on where we are emotionally, do some of these things that are hurtful to the child, and we try to excuse it as, oh, we're covering you. If I don't do it for you now, you don't know what I'm protecting you from in the future, blah, 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 and all of that. So we need to be able to balance it all in everything, find that balance.
Yeah. So which means sometimes be the mother bear that covers the cub, sometimes be the mother eagle that pushes the birdlings or the hatchlings out of the nest.
That one today.
You get.
That one today. So in everything, there is affection.
And there's discipline.
And there is discipline. understand different phases of the child or the children that you're raising as a single parent. So you know what is their natural expression at that point, at that phase that they're in. So you know whether this is something that you condone or this is something that you correct. This is something that you support them in, show affection for them, or this is something that you draw the line and say, that kind of thing. Understanding of those things help guide you to parent that child properly. Our dear friend Pastor Isaiah said something at some point. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. It was like, at some point, you need to know when to stop parenting your child and when to start mentoring your child. So it's a thing of phases in that child's life, understanding it, and then coming from a place of emotional balance and well-being as well, and health also then determines what you're going to be doing to that child or those children in those particular phases.
Oh yeah, did I? Wait. In all of this conversation, I've not told you how beautiful you look, right? Forgive me, my darling.
You're late. Campaign after election. Pay me. You're late. Cannot be saying that now when we are wrapping up the conversation. Look at the time. No.
You can see it that way, or you can see it as we're going to be together forever. And 20, 30 years into our marriage, I still look at you and say, you're beautiful. You can see it that way. Which would you prefer? Cup half empty or cup half full?
Leave me.
Talking about leaving you alone. This is where we wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for being a part of the Fix It podcast. Remember, you can send your messages to us, make your comments, tell the world about this, our YouTube page.
Go tell it on the mountain.
Yeah, so people can see the content we have to share, because we believe that we are trying our best to help our society in the way that we can.
Looking forward to continuing to build this community with you all. So please go and share if you haven't shared already. Like, subscribe, follow,
turn on your notification,
all of that.
Yes.
I will see you all in the next episode.